Hi, my name is Josh Nichols, and I'm from Jacksonville University, and I'm here to talk to you today about motor control and movement in the human body. First, we'll start off with the mind body connection. Everything you do is a goal directed movement. Catching a ball or picking up a glass of water to take a sip. All these things are goal directed movements. And these all are capable or are able to happen because of your skill and ability. Your ability is basically, being able to run fast, jump high, your strength. But skill is something that only practice can bring, and coordination. Um, and skill is kind of a culmination or a build up over time of things that we have practiced or done in life to help us accurately and um, being able to coordinate a movement, a complex movement, if you will. Um, and all this kind of revolves around, these actions revolve around perception, action coupling. Um, what this is your perception is, your sensory feedback, from your sight, um, hearing, smell, touch, taste, and how these things feed back into your central nervous system from your peripheral nervous system, and give you information so that you can base your actions or your action potentials that are fired throughout your body on this information. Uh, we will move on and talk about planning and initiating movement. So basically, when you go to grab that cup of water to take a drink, what happens in your brain, um, and what is the pathway of a certain action potential. And speaking of action potentials, this is kind of the language your brain speaks as far as movement. Um, an action potential is what is fired in your brain and starts in the motor cortex um, when you want to go do something, when you have a voluntary action that happens. And everything is revolved around the CNS and PNS, which is your central nervous system and your peripheral nervous system. Your CNS, it basically takes in information from the PNS and sends it back, and sends these motor controls or movements or actions to your peripheral nervous system and to the muscles. Um, so motor or efferent goes from the central nervous system to the peripheral nervous system, and this is the commands basically for voluntary muscle control. And then what your peripheral nervous system sends back to the central nervous system is your sensory or afferent signals of the outer information that's collected in the environment around you. And basically what happens is when this action potential is generated, it starts in the motor cortex. From there it goes through the basal ganglia, cerebrum, and the diencephalon, which kind of smooth this movement out and coordinate it so that it's not a herky-jerky mumbo-jumbo of jerking around, so that it's a coordinated, soft movement. And from there, it's going to be sent through your brain stem, as you can see right here, down into your spinal cord, where the different muscle neurons are located. Still part of your spinal cord is connected and part of your central nervous system. And here the muscle neurons are going to fire, which you have billions of, and this will then fire into from different nerves from your spinal cord into neuromuscular junctions that are connected from the nerve into the muscle tissue, into the muscle cells, and groups of muscle fibers. And this is where the actual firing happens, the exchange of chemicals of potassium and calcium that cause the muscle to fire, and the ATP to start working into the muscle. So from here we'll talk about how the muscle itself and how it actually fires and the different parts of it. So basically there's muscle pools. So as we were talking about earlier, it's your muscle firing basically like a gun almost. So you have a muscle pool which each of the neuromuscular junctions is connected to, and it has an innervation ratio. This innervation ratio is how many muscle fibers is in the muscle pool, how many fibers fire and pull together when they are fired, when the action potential hits it. And it always it recruits these muscles, these firing muscles or fibers from smallest to largest, so you're not jerking all over the place and pulling the larger muscle groupings first. You do the small ones so that you can have small controlled movements. And this is all based around the all or none principle. Basically, all of these muscles in this pool are going to fire at once or none of them at all. So these groupings are like a permanent bond, if you will. Force output control. So basically, this is talking about what keeping you from being herky jerky, from doing skilled small movements like writing with a pencil. So it starts with recruitment, rate coding, and force output. Recruitment is how many muscle pools and muscle fibers are being recruited to that movement. It's something from like throwing a football to writing your name on a piece of paper. And rate coding and force output, which again are recruitment of the different muscle, not spindles, but muscle fibers, and coordinating how much force they're actually going to put out when they're fired. And muscle properties in general. So like how a muscle is built, its extensibility, which is how much it's able to move, and its elasticity, which is how much the fibers are actually able to stretch, and contractility, which is how much they're able to actually pull in when the muscle contracts. So if you pull your bicep up in a curling motion, how tight that muscle fiber is actually able to bring itself into. And then we're going to move on to monitoring movement. So how your body kind of feels all of these things. Exteroreceptors are receptors on the outer surface of your body. Interoreceptors are more inner in the blood vessels, and proprioceptors, which are in the musculoskeletal system, which is your bones and voluntary muscles like your quads and biceps and triceps and pectorals, things like that. Muscle spindles are in all of your muscles. These detect stretch and contraction of the muscle, so that when you feel your muscle contract and extend, all these things are reading and telling your brain what contraction and movement in your body feels like. Another important thing on reading what your body's feeling is Golgi tendon reflex, which keeps the muscles from retracting too much. So when you go to do a curl, you don't curl so much that you tear anything or break your arm. And another very important thing about reading and keeping track of what's going on around you and in your body is your vision, which is all based around localization and identification. Localizing is finding out where something is and identifying of what it is, what it looks like, and what you associate it with based on past experiences and memories. And then finally we go to different movement models or theories that different scientists have come up with to explain the way we think and the processes that go through our brain. So one way, two ways that our brain kind of works is the open loop and closed loop system. The open loop system is when our brain sends commands directly to the muscles, voluntary movements and things like that, basic movements. And then there's closed loop, where it's the brain sends the command to the muscles, but the muscles send a constant feedback of peripheral information from your taste, sight, all your different senses back to the brain, so that a coordinated multi-step movement, like stepping onto a conveyor belt or a moving floor, or a ball being thrown in the air and you want to jump up and catch it, these kind of complex movements all happen within the closed loop system. Then you have the hierarchical and heterarchical theories, which are hierarchical is the top to bottom, basically saying that your brain controls everything and sends everything down the body like a ladder. And then there's heterarchical, which is that there's constant feedback between all of these things, that there's feedback between the other parts of the body, the organs, the muscles, and things like that to the brain, and it's a constant feedback. And then you also have the dynamic systems of control movement. So this is all based on three main things that it's almost like a spider web, if you will, of different things that come into play and play off of each other for how a decision is made in movement, or how we do things based on the information and environment around us. The three things are individual, based on the person themselves, based on their memory and emotion and things that they've experienced before. The second is environment, which is where you are, whether there's a crowd, people are screaming your name, or watching what you're doing, if there's, distracting noise around you. And then there's the task, which is what you're actually doing, whether you're walking, running, balancing on something, or trying to, again, grab a cup of water to take a sip. All these things are kind of a spider web, if you will, like a triangle that all interconnect and base off each other, to kind of to coordinate a movement. And all these things sort of come together in the dynamic systems theory, that kind of decide what your movement is as a person. And all these things are in a good summary of motor control and movement in human beings. Thank you for your time.